Hello everyone, this is Rkhan11 and today I'm going to do my presentation on databases, and this is for ISA4220 for Professor Green. So the topic of discussion for today's presentation are going to be database management system, and then we'll jump on and talk about some of the best practices around databases. So here on this slide we'll talk about database. What is database? A database is a systematic collection of data. All data that is collected in the database is well organized, which makes data management pretty easy. Data is organized into rows, columns, and tables, and it is indexed to make it easier to find relevant information. Data gets updated, expanded, and deleted as new information is added. Database process workloads to create and update themselves, querying the data they contain and running application against it. So here on this slide, we'll talk about database management system. What is database management system? It is a collection of programs which enable its user to access database, manipulate data, and help in representation of data. It also helps access to database by various users. For example, an online telephone directory would definitely use database management system to store data pertaining to people, phone numbers, and other contact details. Another example would be your electricity service provider is using a database management system to manage billing, client-related issues, and to handle fault data. Database management system is not a new concept. It was implemented in 1960s. Charles Bachman Integrated Data Store, also known as IDS, is said to be the first database management system in the history. With time, database technologies evolved a lot, while usage and expected functionalities of database have been increased immensely. If you look at the slide, there are four major types of database management system. We'll start with the first one, hierarchical database management system. This is a type of database management system that employs the parent-child relationship of storing data. This type of database management system is rarely used nowadays. Its structure is like a tree, where its nodes representing records and branches representing fields. The Windows registry used in Windows XP is an example of hierarchical database. Configuration settings are stored as tree structures. The next one is network database management system. This type of database management system supports many-to-many relationships. This usually results in complex database structures. RDM server is an example of database management system that implements the network model. The next one on our slide is relational database management system. This type of database management system defines database relationships in forms of tables, also known as relations. Relational database management system does not support many-to-many relationships. Relational database management systems usually have predefined data types that they can support. This is the most popular database management system in the market. Some examples of relational database management system are MySQL, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL Server. The next one on our slide is object-oriented relation database management system. This type supports storage of new data type, the data to be stored in the form of objects. Objects to be stored in the database has attributes, for example, gender or age, and methods that define what to do with the data. PostgreSQL is an example of object-oriented relation database management system. So here on this slide, we'll talk about SQL. What is SQL? SQL stands for Structured Query Languages. SQL is actually the standard language for dealing with relational databases. SQL can effectively be used to insert, search, update, and delete database records. SQL plays a very important role. It also helps optimizing and maintenance of databases and much more. Relational database like MySQL, Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, and Sybase all uses SQL. SQL syntax used in these databases are almost similar, except the fact that most databases use different syntaxes. So here on this slide, we'll talk about database security best practices. The first one is separate the database and web servers. Most vendors try to make things easier by having the database created on the same server. that the application is installed. This also makes it easier for an attacker to access the database because they only need to crack the administrator account for one server to have access to everything. It is highly recommended to install database on a separate database server located behind a firewall, not in the DMZ with the web server. While this makes more complicated setup, the security benefits outweigh the additional technical efforts required. The next one is encrypt stored file backup. The stored file of a web application often contains information about database that the software needs to connect to. This information is stored in plain text like many default installations do. Provide the key an attacker needs to access sensitive data. It is highly recommended to encrypt any file that have value to the organization and are stored on the application or database server. If they have value to your organization, they are of absolute value to an attacker. The next one is use application firewall. Many people are under the misconception that protecting the web server has nothing to do with database. This is not true. In addition to protecting a site against cross-site scripting vulnerabilities and website vandalism, a good application firewall can thwart SQL injection attacks as well. By preventing the injection of SQL queries by an attacker, the firewall can help keep sensitive information stored in the database away from the attacker. So it is highly recommended to employ web application firewalls. The next one is keep patches current. Websites that utilize third-party application components and various other plugins and add-ons are more susceptible to an exploit than those that have been patched. So it is highly recommended that you keep your servers up to date and keep patches current to the most recent releases. The next one is enable security controls. Though most database enable security controls by default, administrators should always check the security controls to ensure that this is the case. It is highly recommended to enable security controls on all databases and do not assume that this is the default. Ensure that there are corresponding business processes in place. And that's all there is to it. I hope you guys liked my presentation. Thank you for listening.